podcast all about corporate innovation and entrepreneurship. My name is Steve Leveski, and each week I'll bring you authors, corporate innovation managers, entrepreneurs, and above all else, thought leaders on the topics of innovation, entrepreneurship, and self-improvement. Future Squared brings you a double dose of innovation inspiration every week to help you successfully navigate your innovation journey. Every Monday, I'll bring you a world-class thought leader such as Steve Blank, Alex Osterwalder, Neil Patel, Rand Fishkin, or Whitney Johnson, just to name a few. While every Friday, I'll bring you some quick digestible insights myself to help end your week on a high before you head off for the weekend. Future Squared is proudly brought to you by Collective Campus, an innovation hub, school, and consultancy that works with large organizations to help them adopt the mindset, methodologies, and tools required to explore new business models and disruptive innovation in an era of rapid change. If your organization needs support coming up with ideas, testing and turning those ideas into reality, incubating teams, driving cultural change, or connecting and partnering with startups, then visit Collective Campus online at www.collectivecamp.us. And without further ado, here's today's podcast. Welcome back to Future Squared for episode number 75. Today I'm joined by Shay Namdarian. He is a colleague here at Collective Campus and he is our General Manager of Customer Strategy. Shay recently joined the team and I thought there would be no better way than to onboard him than by interviewing him for an episode of Future Squared all about customer experience. Welcome to the show, Shay.
Thanks, Steve.
Look, before we get into customer experience, perhaps it's worthwhile telling our audience a little bit about your backstory.
So I guess my story involves a lot of consulting. So I've worked at quite a few consulting firms over my time. I think I've spent about 8 years in management consulting across a few different firms. More recently, probably over the last 3 years, I've had a big focus on customer experience. That's kind of been my passion area. And in parallel, I have launched a couple of startups as well, while working full-time. Because what I've noticed is at the big organizations I've worked at, things do move a little bit slower due to the nature of business and the size of the organization. So I really wanted to focus on a couple of startups and really see what I could do. So I've launched 2 different startups, one being Barnaby, which is a fashion socks brand, which launched about 3 years ago. And I also launched a brand on Kickstarter, which was called Winston at the time, and we successfully reached our target as well, which was great. So recently, obviously, joined Collective Campus. Really excited about it. I think I was ready for the switch in career, and I guess I got to the point where I really wanted to move out of that corporate world and really move into the areas I'm interested in, and Collective Campus was a great way for me to do that.
So now you've moved out of the corporate world to work with corporates, but to be on the other side of the fence.
That's pretty much it.
Fantastic. Cool. So you mentioned you worked for a couple of firms. So that was Ernst Young and CapGemini?
Yep, and I also did an internship at Accenture, so I've seen a bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you spent what, like 7 or 8 years?
About 8 years in total.
8 years in the consulting space. Very cool. So I guess you mentioned over the past few years, aside from your consulting, you spent a lot of time after hours, on weekends, building a couple of startups and doing a pretty good job at it. And the first one was Barnaby, a men's fashion sock label, and I do own quite a few pairs of Barnaby socks. And
good to hear.
I think the key differentiator is that they have a button, so it helps them from coming apart in the wash. Look, tell us a little bit about Barnaby and how that idea came about, and I guess aside from that, not just how it came about, but more importantly, I think Barnaby has a great sort of customer experience end-to-end, whether it's online or whether it is when I receive a pair of socks in the mail. Tell us about how Barnaby came to be and the CX journey that a customer can expect.
Yeah, so I guess Barnaby started with myself and two friends of mine. We always wanted to do something outside of our professional day-to-day jobs, and it was just an idea that came about just over. I think we were having dinner at a pizza restaurant, actually. It wasn't Domino's, but it was slightly classier than that. So we were having a little bit classier than that as well. But we were having dinner there, and we just came up with the socks idea. I think we just wanted to just create our own designs, some cool designs, unique ones, and we thought we'd just give it a shot. And as we started searching for manufacturers, started the process, things just kind of fell into place. And because there was three of us, the great thing about it was when one or two of us might have lost a little bit of motivation, there was someone else there to kind of pick things up. And things just snowballed from there, and we got some samples, we tested some things out with customers and people we knew, just around designs that we wanted, what people wanted to pay, what they were willing to pay, just some really key things around the brand, just so we could really get that customer insight. And things just, snowballed. Like I said, we got the samples, we found a great manufacturer. We came up with a couple of points of differentiation. One was the button, obviously, which you mentioned, Steve, which people seem to really like. We have some unique packaging as well.
Yep.
It's like a brown paper bag that kind of adds to that kind of unique feel. We wanted to kind of, turn it into that experience as opposed to just another pair of socks.
Yeah, and I think the brown paper bag is probably underselling it because you do have sort of like a clear sheet in the brown paper bag fashioned into the face of Barnaby.
We've got our logo on the front, and it's like you said, it's clear, so you can see the design of the sock behind that. And it seems to work really well in retail stores and markets and those kind of things. And I guess on top of that, with our designs, we try to make really unique designs of things that I guess we would wear, and we get a lot of inspiration from anything and everything that we see, and we try to turn that into designs that people like. And I guess the great thing is we can test designs as well. So things that work, we keep them. Things that don't, we refine. We bring some new designs in, and kind of try to work with the feedback we get from the customers along the way. And you mentioned obviously our customer experience and what we do in that space. I think the important thing for us is, because we're still growing, we really want to provide that experience where a customer buys our socks and obviously they get that experience that enables them to feel comfortable in continuously buying our brand. And we try different things. Like one thing, for example, is that it might sound a bit weird, but if we've had customers that have ordered before, and they might live a couple of streets down the road from us, and we might have some socks on us that fulfills their need and their order. So there's been times where in the day that they order, we deliver the socks, and we kind of email them just to say, hey, how did you feel about us getting the socks to you so quickly? And the reaction is fantastic. Like, people get really excited about that, and some of the people who have actually done that too, they've been the ones that have been the biggest supporter of ours moving forward. It might sound a bit creepy, but it's actually it's a great way for us to kind of test out whether those kind of things make a difference for customers.
Definitely, and I guess the lesson there for a lot of our retail executives listening is that sometimes it's worth paying a premium to get that same day delivery because people don't expect it, and perhaps even absorbing that into the price maybe is going to have untold benefits down the line when people talk about the amazing experience they've had to their friends.
It's the wow factor, I guess, right?
Yeah.
If you can identify those moments within the journey where you can wow the customer, they're the things that they essentially remember, and they're the things they'll tell other people about.
Fantastic. And I guess that kind of reminds me of a Dale Carnegie quote from How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is, once I did bad, and that I heard ever. Twice I did good, but that I heard never. So I know Barnaby is really big on, if a customer is, say, for whatever reason, unhappy with something, you will address that. So can you tell me about a time when a customer was unhappy and how you went about, satisfying that customer? Yeah,
so I guess you're always going to get emails from customers and contact from customers that may not have had the best experience, and we didn't deliver to the wants and needs that they had. So I guess an example might have been around a customer who didn't actually receive their socks. So we get, obviously we have to use a postal service to get our socks to customers, and sometimes that doesn't really work out to plan. The postal service might say that it delivered it, but a customer might email us saying, hey, where are my socks? I haven't received them yet. So in that instance, we follow up with the customer just to make sure, have you checked, the front of your house? Have you checked your mailbox? Just to make sure that, they definitely don't have the socks. And if they don't, we pretty much just send them out another package with the same socks. Because for us, we see these customers as, a valued part of our business essentially, and if we can continue that experience and their appreciation of our brand, it makes a big difference. So a lot of the time when we've actually done that, we've sent the socks out to them again. We've made sure that we ask for a different address, a work address or something else, because there might have been an issue with the address they provided in the first place. And we send the socks out to them again, and usually it delights them, and they're really happy with the experience that they have. Obviously, if everyone was emailing us saying they didn't receive their socks and we did that all the time, we probably wouldn't be in business right now. But there's the occasional customer where that happens, and given the nature of postal services, every now and again these things do happen.
Yeah, and that seems to be a growing trend amongst progressive sort of startups when it comes to CX, in that while it is something that the odd customer can abuse, most people are honest and don't take advantage of those types of policies, and essentially the customer that perhaps is the type to abuse it would be so delighted by the experience that they would then go on and tell their friends and not make a meal of it. That's
exactly it. And we have had the occasional customer who emails us saying, hey, I got your socks as a gift and I got holes in them from my first wear. And that kind of surprises us. So we go back, there's actually been one customer that said this. We went back to him and I just said, can you just send us a photo? Because we really want to improve the brand. And if that is the case, we really want to know, where the hole is, what it looks like, all that kind of stuff. And then he never replied to us, so I'm guessing there was probably one of the examples where someone was trying to take advantage of the brand.
Well, as a Barnaby customer, I can vouch that it takes a good 20 or 30 washes before I've had holes in my socks.
Thanks, Steve. I'll pay you later for that.
Okay, so I guess you've grown Barnaby to a point where you've been stocked in over 20 retail stores across Australia, including the really popular online platform, The Iconic. You've had placements in key publications locally and worldwide, such as GQ, Men's Style, and the Daily Telegraph. What are some of the techniques you've used to grow the business to this point?
Yep. One of the things that has worked great for us is collaborations. So we've tried to collaborate with some brands that align to our brand, and it allows us to kind of reach a bigger audience as well. So we've done some socks, or designed some socks that are in collaboration with other brands. So for example, we did a sock with a barbershop in Melbourne, Rocco's Barbershop.
Oh, right. Down in Port Melbourne?
Yeah, they've got a bit of a cult following.
Yeah.
And we did some socks with some, razor blades on there, and they were pretty cool, and it allowed us to kind of, reach another audience. They were selling their socks in their store, in their barbershop as well. And they're really well known in Melbourne, and it was another way for us to really, strengthen our brand within Melbourne, where the brand was essentially born. And in parallel to that, we've done other collaborations with other brands such as Bailey Nelson, which is the, glasses brand, which is... They're growing quite quickly, which is fantastic for them, and I think partnering with a brand like that, it just allows us to reach a bigger audience, but also an audience that aligns with our brand in a way. So we had that sock, the Bailey sock, which was awesome. Also, another collaboration avenue for us was we wanted to partner with charities as well from the very beginning, just to design some socks for charities where all the proceeds went towards those charities that we aligned with. So one of those was YGAP, which is a charity started up in Melbourne, I think, from memory, and Habitat for Humanity, which was another charity. So we designed socks for those brands, and the proceeds went towards those charities.
Would you say that those particular types of socks sold better than others, or by virtue of the fact that not only were people getting something functional that looked good, but it's something that perhaps fulfilled a customer job to be done, as one of my recent guests, Karen Dillon, spoke about, which is that people feel good supporting a cause, and rather than just buying something that looks pretty for themselves.
Definitely. And I think more as time passes, people are more and more into that social responsibility stage. So they really want to support things when they're buying these brands. So when we did the Habitat for Humanity designed socks, we said once we sold, say, for example, 100, that allowed us to build something in a disadvantaged area, like a part of a house, for example. Wow. And it kind of gave that outcome from buying the socks. So people knew, all right, if they sell 100 pairs, this is what's going to happen. So they knew the exact end result, and that worked quite well. Yeah. It's a fair point you make, because I think people really love to see what happens from what they buy, and obviously they get a great pair of socks out of it as well, but they can also see that they're benefiting the community.
Definitely, and I think that's one of the reasons I pay twice as much for my shampoo, because I buy thank you water shampoo, which I suppose fulfills a little bit of that sort of social, need that you have to give back.
That's it, yeah.
I guess social transcendence is what Maslow would call it at the top of his hierarchy of needs. So let's digress for a little while from Barnaby to your second startup, which was a brand called Winston, now known as W Time, for reasons we may or may not get into on this podcast. But wanted to touch on the Kickstarter campaign you ran. I mean, you said that you hit your target on day one at the start of the show. Your target was $15,000. You eventually raised, in 15 days, $47,000 from 283 backers. Can you share some tips for anyone, whether they are corporate project teams or startups, looking to use, say, a crowdfunding platform, not only to raise money, but also to validate appetite for their idea?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest thing I'll say is with Kickstarter, you really need to invest a lot of time into it. You can't expect to just put a campaign on there and just expect people to come on, buy your product and help you raise your goal. I think sometimes it might be a bit of a misconception that you get it on there and people are just going to come flooding in and start backing your brand. So I guess the biggest thing for us was planning the project and the campaign. So it started a few months before we actually launched it on Kickstarter, and I guess some of the key learnings or the key tips I can probably give around the process is make sure you plan, like I said, make sure that a great thing we did was we hired virtual assistants, and that allowed us to get their help in reaching out to people who aligned with our brand and what we were trying to do prior to the campaign launching. So we created some templates. They were able to reach out to those different ambassadors or people that align to our brand, and we got a lot of those people coming back to us saying, great, we'd love to post about your brand when your campaign launches. So it allowed us to kickstart our campaign as soon as the first day started. So all these notifications went out from different people that were happy to post about our brand, and it kind of allowed us to reach a big market as soon as the campaign started. That was one of the key things that we did. It's really important as part of the campaign to tell a story and really connect with the audience. I think Kickstarter, the people on Kickstarter, they enjoy supporting these brands because they can really get into their shoes and feel what they're feeling and really appreciate what they're trying to do. And I think if you tell that story and really connect with them, they're more likely to back your campaign, which is great. Another one was a really great tip that maybe not a lot of people know or do is when you're running a campaign, it's great to collaborate with other. It's collaboration. That's the big thing I'm mentioning today, I guess. But it's collaborate with other campaigns that are on at the same time with potentially similar audiences to what you're after for your brand.
Right.
So we reached out to a lot of other campaigns who are running at the same time as ours, just to say, hey, it would be great if you could, send a message to all your backers at the moment, letting them know about our brand, and we'll do the same thing for you. And to be honest, every time one of those emails went out, there was a big increase in the number of backers we had straight away, which was awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you touched on heaps of awesome points there, and just on the backers, I think that's something that podcast hosts do as well, where they perform, say, interview swaps with other hosts who share a similar audience, and it's a great way to grow your own audience by leveraging that of others and just increasing your reach. But yeah, collaborating with partners is definitely a great point. Virtual assistants. Do you have any advice for our listeners who may be looking at using a virtual assistant, whether it is to, fire a rocket under the proverbial behind of their Kickstarter campaign, or whether it is just for day-to-day use?
There's a lot of great websites out there that provide the service. So I guess there's websites like Upwork or Freelancer, and other ones like Superhands, which are great as well. And I think the great thing about virtual assistants is that you can test them out. You can just kind of give them some simple tasks, see how they go, and kind of build that trust. It's always hard to just trust someone new who obviously you can't see them. You're not seeing them face to face. They're not in the same space as you. They're somewhere on the other side of the world working for you. And I guess the best thing to do is just give them some simple tasks, see how they perform, and then kind of increase the level of complexity as you go along.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this the other day as well. Was the great thing about a virtual assistant is that you can give them a task, say before you go to bed, and if they're in a different time zone, when you wake up, something's been done, and it's like, I guess you're working while you're sleeping, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
Nothing
definitely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think I've talked about virtual assistants as one way to, suppose, outsource those tasks that are just a little bit, I wouldn't say mundane, but repeatable, where you can just codify them into a process, get a Google Doc going, outsource it to a virtual assistant, and at a fraction of the cost it would cost you to do it, or one of your team members, you can get a lot of stuff done, and it frees you up to focus on the more value-adding activities and really play to your strengths.
Yeah, and there's people that get virtual assistants for their day-to-day, their own life.
Yeah.
Just different aspects of their life. For example, if they're looking to go on a holiday, they need to research flights or accommodation. As we know, that could probably take hours or weeks or months. Who knows how long that could take, but it's something, you give those requirements you're after to a virtual assistant, they'll get back to you within a couple of hours with everything you would have probably done over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So they can help with, those tasks that take you a lot of time, but probably aren't the best place for you to spend your time.
Yeah, definitely. And the lesson there is, take your time, but expect that initially, perhaps they probably won't be that great, but be explicit with your instructions. And with each job they do, they just get better and better. I guess it's kind of like machine learning in a way, where the computers get smarter and smarter, so too do the virtual assistants as they get to understand you and what you're after. Fantastic. So Shay, you've joined Collective Campus as our GM of Customer Strategy. Obviously you've got a passion in customer experience. Why is it such an area of interest?
I think I've always had a passion for the customer, and designing things for the customer, as opposed to just assuming what the customer wants and ultimately producing something that they don't really want.
Yeah.
So everything I've kind of done in my life, in the startups, in my workspace, it's always had the customer as the focus. And I guess these days competition is increasing at a rapid rate. It's a lot easier for people to enter the market across different industries. Yeah. And in parallel, customers are becoming more demanding. So, for example, 5 years ago, a customer might have been happy to wait a couple of days to get a response about an inquiry they might have had, whereas today, if you don't get back within a day, they're like, what's going on? Did they get my email? So demands are changing from those customers, and I think it's becoming that area where companies can really differentiate themselves from their competitors, and especially these days as well, where customers can get information very easily on the internet. Like there's a lot of transparency, like pricing, just your standard information, or even information about competitors. It's so easy for a customer to get all that information just online, and it's harder to hide from the customer. So it's really important to provide that experience that differentiates you, where they've got all that information, but they're making that decision based on the experience they're getting from the company, as opposed to some of those other elements which probably aren't as prominent as what they might have been in the past. Yeah,
and I guess by 2020, we know that customer experience will actually surpass price and product as the number one differentiator for companies. So it's something that organizations, both large and small, need to be thinking about, perhaps first and foremost when they're putting together their product and marketing strategies.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the key thing there as well is people have good experiences, bad experiences in different experiences, but it's those good and bad ones that they actually talk about and they tell other people about. And I guess in terms of statistics, I think it was around, those people that have a good experience, 87% of those people will tell someone else about that experience. If they have a bad experience, I think it's 95% of those people will tell someone else about that experience. So it's that word of mouth marketing in a sense. So the really good stuff or the really bad stuff, that's what people hear about. They don't hear about the stuff in between. So I guess as a business, you really want to produce more of that really good stuff as opposed to that bad stuff, because as soon as people hear bad things about your brand, it's going to influence them, especially if they're hearing it from someone they know, someone they trust in. So it's really important, especially with social media these days. You can share bad experiences with brands. We've all seen them on Facebook. You know, you'll get your airline comments where someone's posting on an airline's website saying, I've had this terrible experience. All their friends see it when they go online, and they're like, oh, that's a terrible experience. I don't want to fly with this brand. I'll go with another brand. So it's even more important in this day and age with social media just kind of blowing up. It's really important to get on that front foot and I guess respond to customers on these platforms as well and get to them quickly so you kind of turn them. And actually, another point I'll touch on as well is I get really excited about this stuff, but what I found really fantastic from a brand point of view when it comes to Barnaby and W Time is that when you get a customer who contacts you and they've had a bad experience or something hasn't gone right for them, they're the customers that we've found are the best to turn and become brand ambassadors essentially. So we've had customers that have come back to us, had a not so great experience during their journey with our brand. We come back to them and we essentially turn them and they become ambassadors of our brand. They're like, fantastic, thanks for getting back to us, thanks for helping us with our problem, we love your brand. So they're the best ones to turn, and I found that those kind of customers are the ones we have had throughout the journey of our brands.
Yeah, excellent. And I guess they're the ones that are likely to get on social media and tell their friends. And to that point, I know Jeff Bezos famously said that if people have a bad experience in the physical world, they tell 6 people, but if they have a bad experience in the digital world, even if it is in the physical world, but they can tell 6,000 people online by virtue of reach of social media. Which is just crazy to think, but it's true. It's as easy as that, and it's so quick as well. It's quite instant to reach all these people. And it's important that companies don't just create a social media presence and respond with, I suppose, scripted responses which only serve to add insult to injury when someone's having a bad experience. I know personally I had an experience with an insurance company, and I won't name names, but if you dig deep into my Twitter feed, you'll find out where I was basically venting my frustration at something, and a generic response came back which did not even serve to remotely touch on what I was talking about, which just made me even more frustrated with the way things were going. So it's important that if you are engaging with customers on social media, you provide a very personalized approach. Definitely. So I guess, are there any companies that more or less inspire you right now in the customer experience space? Who do you think is leading the charge? One brand that I love talking about is Zappos, which is a US brand, online brand. They used to just sell shoes, but now they kind of have expanded out and sell quite a few different things. I've listened to a lot of the CEO's, Tony Shay. I think he's a lot of his videos just around customer experience and what they do in that space. And some of the stuff he talks about is just kind of inspires me. And I think some of the key things that they do is, for example, on their website, they have their phone number. I think it's on the top right-hand corner, really big, for their customers to call if they've got any questions, they want to talk about anything. And as you know, Steve, with a lot of websites these days, if you want to get their contact information, even if you want to find an email to contact a brand or a company, you've got to search 8 layers deep within the website, and then you probably still can't find it. It's impossible to find a contact email, let alone a number. A lot of brands don't even have numbers these days. So they've taken the opposite approach where they actually want to talk to their customers, and they've got the phone number in that top right-hand corner for their customers to call, and they use that opportunity to really get some customer insights, really understand what the customer's going through, improve their brand based on those conversations they're having with the customer. And from what I've heard as well, they don't actually have any KPIs where they've got to stop talking to the customer after 2 minutes. Any longer than 2 minutes, they haven't done their job properly. They're encouraged to talk to the customer as long as they need to ensure that customer has a good experience, and they gain some insights out of it as well. I think that's something you really don't see on websites anymore, a phone number, especially right in your face on the first page. Yeah, that's something I personally can vouch for. And as much as a lot of these progressive companies and social media platforms do a lot of good for the world, many of them have quite interesting approaches to customer support where essentially they want you to solve the problem yourself, and I totally get that. But oftentimes when your brand is so heavily invested into one of these platforms, particularly from the perspective of marketing, and then for whatever reason, you're not able to advertise, so I'm not going to name any names, and then you can't find a contact phone number, and you need to just lodge a support request and wait for days on end while yourself and your clients are more or less on hold, is quite frustrating. So not being just another tech company who doesn't have a phone number, doesn't have an email address you can connect with, and actually providing that service is a massive differentiator.
Yeah, and that's just one of the things they do. They also, if they've got an item on their website, someone buys it and it's actually not in stock. So what they will do is they will direct you to a competitor's website that has the same product to ensure you get what you're after. And I remember in the video, the audience clapped when he said that, because it's ludicrous to think any brand would ever direct you to a competitor to allow you to buy the product that you're after. But they view that as a way to I guess, impress the customer, improve that experience, and have them as a lifelong customer. If a customer has that experience, they're like, wow, like, what a brand, well, like, which brand does this? It's so rare. So they're likely to, come back to them, and really they appreciate the honesty. And I think honesty is a big thing across all brands, where a customer probably doesn't expect that. And when you get something you don't expect, it's always something you remember and you'll tell other people about as well.
Yeah, definitely. Always refer customers to, I suppose, rivals of high repute when you can't serve them yourself.
Yeah.
And I guess Zappos have a history of innovation dating back to their early days when they just wanted to test the concept of selling shoes online and more or less set up an online store, didn't actually own any shoes, and when an order came through, they went down to the local shoe store, bought the shoes, packaged it up themselves and sent them off, and that was one way for them to test essentially their minimum viable product way back when, and it serves as a great case study to this day of how you go about validating those customer assumptions early on before going out and spending a ton of money building the full-blown product. Exactly. Cool, so we, I guess, all have our stories of amazing customer experiences. Do you have any that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's probably a couple. I haven't experienced either of them personally, but there have been stories I've been told by other people. And like I said, they're sometimes the most impactful when you hear them from people you know. One was a story a friend of mine told me. It was about Singapore Airlines. I'll name the brand because it's a good story.
Yeah.
Well,
should we be naming the brand if it's a bad one? As we said, tell 6,000 people. We've got 2,000 people a day that listen to this podcast, so we'll be telling a lot more, but let's stick to the good story.
Yeah, so what they do is, if someone's flying on their airline, I don't think it happens all the time, but occasionally what they do is, if the person's having a birthday while they're on the plane, it happens. People are flying while they're celebrating their birthday, essentially. So what they do is, they provide the customer with a cake saying happy birthday and a few little things when the clock strikes 12, wherever they are in the world. And that's something that I think is great, because they're using information they have about the customer. So these airlines, they've got date of birth, they've got the customer's date of birth. Why not use it to their advantage? And something as simple as providing a customer with a cake while they're on the plane, celebrate their birthday, where normally they'd probably just be sitting there depressed, not having any friends around or anything. It's always that, it's that wow experience. It's that experience where you're like, whoa, like, I never expected this. How did you even know it was my birthday? Obviously, eventually they realize why, but it's one of those experiences you'll tell other people about. And someone told me about it, and now I'm telling you about it, and now your audience is hearing about it as well. And I think that was just a really cool story, and I think it's always great to be able to pick those, use that information you have about customers to be able to wow them, because it's a great way to kind of differentiate yourself from other competitors as well.
That's a great story, and I guess this brings us down to our lightning round. Just because you are a colleague here at Collective Campus does not exempt you from participating in our lightning round. So let's do this. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Okay,
Always ready.
2 hypotheticals, 1 lifestyle design question. Question number 1 is, if you could work for any company at any stage of the company life cycle, who would it be and why?
Oh boy, that's a good question. There's probably a lot of companies I would like to work for at different stages. But one example for me would be Airbnb. I look at Airbnb and I personally, the things I've enjoyed the most are the parts of my startups where it's been a challenge and you've had to kind of like hustle, but you get to a point where all that effort and time and hard work you put in results in something fantastic. And I think with Airbnb, I think it was like 2010 when I think they were launching in New York and they had a few listings online, but it wasn't really getting the traction that they wanted. And they went out and just took some awesome photos of each of these places. And that, just to kind of test out whether better photos would actually make a difference. Yeah. And it just, the people applying for these properties and actually staying at these residences, that it increased dramatically. And they just used that model and continued it across other places. And yeah, it was just an example of a moment where you're like, let's just test something cool out, see how it goes. They put that effort in themselves. I think they bought their own camera, went around taking photos, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense because, I mean, if I was to be on Airbnb and looking at, say, staying in San Francisco or New York, and I'm in Australia and all I see is really low resolution photos of someone's half-made bed, chances are I'm not going to book. But if it's a very high-res photo, the apartment looks flawless, then I'm much more likely to hit, book. Yeah.
And I think it would just been an exciting time within the business to kind of just see the impact that made.
Definitely. They went from, I think, making $200 a week in their first 9 months to today being worth $30 billion US, which is more than the market cap of the Marriott and the Starwood. So, yes, great story of startup success. Okay, question number 2 is, if you could ask anyone a question, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask?
I really should have prepared for this. All right, let's have a think. I guess a pretty straightforward one for me would be probably Steve Jobs. I'd probably ask him, what would you have done differently with Apple if you was with the iPhone, for example, if you're still around?
Ooh,
I think I love my iPhone and I'll always love it, but I think it'll be interesting to see what innovation he would have brought in or things he would have done differently. With the new iPhones coming out. I think that would be quite cool.
That is a very good answer. Perhaps one of the best answers we've had. And as someone who is very has a lot of respect for what Apple has achieved and over the years, disrupting so many industries and coming along with the MacBook, but the Macintosh back in the day, to they essentially created personal computing, but along to the iPod, the iPad, and of course the iPhone. But and I also own an Apple TV at home. But it just seems as if that level of innovation is tapering off somewhat, and other companies are starting to put pedal to the metal, such as Google, and that Google Pixel phone is looking quite appealing at this stage, despite having had an iPhone for the last 5 or 6 years. So definitely an interesting question. And finally, do you have any rituals or routines that you partake in to help you stay on top of your game?
All right. Probably a few things I do, but one of the things I've done recently, which I mentioned to you as well, Steve, is I'm trying to get into writing a bit more in terms of just kind of getting my thoughts down on computer or paper. And a really good website I use at the moment is 750 words, so 750words.com. And it encourages you to just try to write 750 words a day. And I'm trying to get into that routine where, every morning, sit down, just write what's on my mind. And the great thing about that is that you can kind of go back to previous things you've written about, and they may potentially end up being blog posts, for example, or ideas around blog posts, or just things that you can reuse for different parts of your life. And I think it's always good to it's a good way to cleanse, kind of get what's in your mind out on paper or type it out. And I feel like it's worked well for me. It's very hard to hit that 750 words. It's a lot of words. But I'm usually hitting about 300 or 400, but it's a really good way to kind of cleanse your mind in a way.
Definitely, it's definitely a great way to cleanse your mind and get those words down on paper. And even if it is 300 to 400 words every single day, that is quite a lot. I know Seth Godin has been publishing a blog post a day for I think I'm not getting too. I'd say between 5 and 10 years, perhaps more. Who knows? He's been doing it for forever.
Yeah.
And just getting into the habit of putting those words down on paper is going to have untold benefits both in your professional and personal life. Well, thank you so much for those insights, Shay. They've been awesome. Where can our audience go to connect with you? Can they find you on, say, Twitter, Instagram, or send you an email?
Yeah, they can send me an email, LinkedIn. I've got to get on top of my Twitter game, so probably keep to the LinkedIn and the email.
So that would
for
be
the time being.
Shay@collectivecamp.us.
That's it.
Fantastic. Okay, well, any parting words of wisdom for our audience?
Oh, just what does it say? Monday. Just enjoy the week and just ensure that you make the most of every day, because we're lucky to be around, lucky to really be able to do what we're passionate about, and just make the most of each day.
Fantastic, absolutely love that. Okay, well, thank you again, Shay, for taking part in our midweek special. You did say it's Monday, but this will be going live by the time people are listening to it. It will be Wednesday, so enjoy your hump day. But if you absolutely love what you do, you won't be looking forward to the weekend. You'll be knee-deep in work, right in flow, and absolutely loving every moment of it. Loving the process, not just looking forward to the outcome. So that's it for another episode of Future Squared. It's been an absolute pleasure having you listen to us for what is episode 75, 3/4 of the way to 100. Until next time, keep satisfying customers. Future Squared out.